Welcome to Your Unique Brilliance podcast with Nicola, bringing you a weekly fresh flow of guidance, inspirations, powerful tips, and conversations designed to help you create your vision, discover your greatest diamond potential, and begin living the life you want. This is about empowering your truth, your choice, and your voice. Hello, and welcome back to Your Unique Brilliance podcast with me, Nicola Salter. And today I'm delighted to have with us our wonderful guest, Dr. Julie Ducharme, who is going to be with us today talking about perfectionism and how to overcome perfectionism. It's so lovely to have you here today, Julie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we begin, I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to introduce you and just share some of this amazing background that you have and all of your wonderful skills and talents with everybody. And at the end of the interview, I would love you to share your website and where we can find you. Dr. Julie Ducharme has dedicated her career to empower and support people in their endeavors and their dreams. She has become a 5 times national best-selling author. She's recognized by Inc. magazine. She hosts a podcast called She, CEOs, and Authentically You. And she's had numerous TV appearances with CBS, ABC, Fox, all about women's empowerment and also helping our veterans. She's a professional public speaker and a serial entrepreneur. And her most recent book, Authentically You, Empowering Your Way to Success, is now out, and it's about changing the way women approach their lives. She's also serving as a doctoral chair and instructor at various universities, and she's the creator and president of Synergy Learning Institute, which is a small technical and vocational college focused on helping our military vets transition back to school and civilian life. She's also regularly invited to help new schools get off the ground with her newest project, the Steinberg Sport Academy, where she's taken on the role of Chief Academic Officer and is building out one of the most innovative STEAM schools in the nation. And I would love to hear more about that too, Julie, in a short while. Her unique speaking style ignites the passion inside all of us and makes that tiny spark that we have into a blaze of empowerment. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. You certainly have so many different skills, and where you put your focus into so many different things where you're helping people to grow, you're helping to empower them. Can you tell us how this all began for you? How this became your mission and your purpose?
Yeah. Well, I've always been one of those people that believe that we're not a one-trick pony and that you should try everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things you're going to fail at and find out you're not really good at. And then there's some things that you're going to find you're fantastic at. And I've always had what I like to call passionate curiosity about things. And so I believe that's part of my personality and who I am. And that's how that really helped me explore a lot of different avenues. And as I went through my life, and gosh, there's so many stories there, but I'll kind of pick the one that helped move me in this direction. It was probably close to 13 years ago. My daughter was 2. I just had my son. I had taken on a really big role as a dean over 20 business colleges, and I was working remote, and it was my first time having a female boss. And I was really excited because I thought, oh my gosh, I've always worked with guys. This is going to be great. And it turned out being the worst job that I had ever had. My boss was incredibly toxic and worked very hard to get me to quit every day. And my hair started falling out. I was not leaving my desk enough to just even use the bathroom regularly because I was afraid I wasn't going to get the work done. I'd get calls daily from her telling her how bad I was. She was the one who hired me too, which was strange.
Very strange. Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to the doctor, and the doctor said, if you don't change professions soon, you're going to have a heart attack at the age of 30. And it was a real eye opener for me. And the reason I share that is when I decided to finally leave that job, which was very difficult because I had made it into this big job at a young age. And everyone had said, oh, you're so successful. I thought people would think, oh, I couldn't cut it, or I was going to be a failure. And I was so disappointed because I was naive to the fact of understanding what was happening in that situation. And so when I left that job, I kept asking myself, why are we not supporting ourselves as women? Why is it like this? As I talk to many women, they say, oh yeah, it's like that all the time. Women are super vicious. And I'm like, well, why are we vicious? Like, why is this happening? There's some type of gap that is separating women. And so that was really the moment that inspired me to write, to create She Talks, to realize, as you talked about the article I wrote on being a recovering perfectionist,
Yes.
from the cultural expectations of norms. And so that was really the moment where I thought, I have to change this norm. I have to start bringing women together and allowing women to realize that we don't have to be against each other.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I was going to do that at the time, but I just thought, this is crazy. We have to figure it out. And that was kind of a spark of moment in my life where I started going after all these things that I started writing. I'd been told in college I wasn't smart enough to be in school. I should drop out. But I started writing. I was told, oh, well, you're not famous enough to be on a stage. So I created my own stage and started speaking. And I
Yeah.
wanted to open that stage up to any other women to tell their stories. I didn't care where they came from, how much money they had, followers. I just wanted to create a platform to allow women to speak because I
Hmm.
knew if they could speak and tell their stories, we would start to break down the walls.
Hmm.
And so this is how I started building more companies. And because when I left that job, I had to make money. And a mentor said, well, listen, Julie, you've been playing with these little companies. Why don't you build your companies? And that's what I did. And as they say, you have to have multiple revenue streams to survive in this day and age with the cost. And so I just started building. And as I mentioned before, my philosophy was like, well, shoot, let's just try it. We might like totally fail, like epic failure, and then we can check that off the list and go to
Yeah.
the next thing that's not an epic failure, which I've definitely had both of those epic successes and epic failures. But that was kind of the moment in my life that really changed the narrative to what I'm
Mm.
doing today. Um, and so that's why I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, this is so wonderful to hear. I mean, it's not wonderful about your female boss, but the journey that you took and the action you took from that need that the boss had, whether it was for, perfectionism, whether it was to make you look small so she could feel better, who knows what was going on there. But that nugget that grew within you of like, this is not right that women do this. And I've seen it a lot too. I've seen it, and I was in the corporate world for quite a while, where there's so much competition against each other to rise to the top, as well as the competition with men. And this is how we position ourselves, or have done continuously, and it creates so much anxiety. And as you've said, this recovering from that need for perfectionism, um, we sometimes don't even know we have it or we're even doing it. And you weren't even fully aware you were
Mhm.
doing it at work in that particular job, were you?
No, no. I mean, the cultural pressure and the expectation of women's in high level positions is it's like best thing I say is you just feel like this boulder on your back and you're trying so hard to meet those expectations that you kind of forget who you should be and what you should be. And
Mm-hmm.
that other counterparts, and not to say that my male counterparts don't have this pressure, but it's a different pressure. And, we'll say things like, for example, you see I'm wearing a pink jacket today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I had my epiphany, I decided no more black suits, no more, hair in a bun. Like I need to just be me and I need people to like me for who I am. But when
Mm-hmm.
I was that position, I started very young. I was a college professor at the age of 23.
Mm-hmm.
Really hard to make people take you seriously when you're 23. So I was constantly behaving and dressing like my male counterparts all the way up into those positions. And my leadership style, although different, it's good, it's beneficial. But when I was in those positions, I thought I will behave like my male counterparts in order to be successful.
Yes.
And I realized that that was part of a naiveness, but also part of a downfall for me because when I actually really found who I truly was, my authentic self, I realized that I could be imperfect,
Mm-hmm.
that vulnerability was actually a valued asset among the people I worked with because it humanized me.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that even though I was maybe their leader, I was their boss, that I still had issues and problems in life, things just like they did. And so that created a trust among us that they couldn't have before when I was just a hardcore trying to be a dude. for lack of a better
That's
word.
that's the thing, and I think with feminism too. Just adding to what you said, because I resonate with this conversation. Well, I was in the corporate world at a very young age and ended up wearing red power suits to work to sit in the board meetings because it was all male dominated. And it was this feminism has been born to fight the male system. And in fact, it really is and should be, in my view, about looking at ourselves, as you've said, as being authentic to ourselves and not being in competition in the male paradigm of work and creating our own paradigm of work. And the fact that you became approachable, you humanized the business approach, I think is such a wonderful example for many women leaders out there who might be still struggling with this competition with men and stepping into your authenticity, being who you really are, but also not being afraid to be who you are. Because it takes some courage, I think, to break out of the box as you've done. Many women like to keep in that flow of being like everyone else and comparing themselves. So breaking free of this restriction that we've created is so important. And the fact that you've taken that step to do that and the courage to do it is very inspiring for so many of us.
Well, and two, I think what people don't realize is I was highly respected for it.
Mm,
My male counterparts and my female counterparts, when I just decided like I have to be who I am. And if that means that I'm wearing a pink jacket or a purple jacket, I can still show my leadership and my strength. And they realize that, hey, I was an expert in my industry. And so really a lot of the holdups were me and my fear,
mm,
and I tell women a lot of times, like, you're always going to have a naysayer. They always say if you're doing something right, you're going to have some haters, of course. And you have to remember that those people who are hating on you, it's not you. They have issues going on in their life. They have insecurities. You just happen to be there for them to push them off of. But I can't tell you how many women will
mm.
tell me about these issues, and I go, listen, it's not you. You're just there and you got
No,
to just move forward. But I was so much more respected because I showed my expertise. What came out of my mouth was not, something strange. It was, I was an expert in the industry. But I had to, as many say, take my seat at the table. I had to speak up. Sure, sometimes I had to defend myself in my youth. I was oftentimes more discriminated for being young in the industry than I was a woman because they just didn't think I was old enough to have the experience or smart enough to have the experience. And so, that was really different for
that's
me. I
hard.
mean, not saying that I didn't every once in a while get some weird comment about being a woman, but um, I had a lot of respect from my male counterparts. They really respected me because I showed that I knew what I was doing. I really actually ran into more struggles with the women because of the insecurities they had. And once we could get past that, I can't tell how many women I sit down with and I go, listen, I don't want your job. I just want to make you look good. That's
Mm-hmm.
really what I want to do. So let's work together. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to do something underhanded to you, and I've had to have that conversation
Yeah,
over and over with my
yeah,
female counterparts for them to believe me because they've been burnt before.
yeah.
But that's something that I think it's funny. It's 20, I mean, we're in 2024 and we're still talking about women struggling to be authentic in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And why is that? What do we need to change as a culture for women to know it's okay to be in the workplace and boast about your children and say you're a mom and a wife and or you've got grandkids, and still be considered an authority in what you
Mm-hmm.
do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's interesting and I think it's changing a lot. But
It it is, and I just cut in there. I think sometimes we're overcorrecting ourselves at the moment. I think the pendulum's swinging one way where we weren't doing anything. It's swung very far the other way now, where we're overcorrecting, where every little thing, every nuance is wrong, and we're getting sensitive to every single thing that's being said to us.
yeah.
And coming back into balance with that might take another couple of years or so. But if you think about it, for thousands of years we've been undermined
Mhm.
in the way that unfortunately we have been treated and what we've accepted. And um, women giving birth in rice fields and women giving birth thousands of years ago in a corner of a room and with no doctors and cutting the umbilical cords themselves. I mean, we're extraordinary. So you can see, as you just said, where that fear comes from and that lack of trust,
Mhm.
even in that leadership position, because they have been burned.
Mhm.
And women have had to fend for themselves and stand up for themselves
Yeah.
in such a way that they don't trust other women. So
Mhm.
And it is 2024. It's like, yes, when is this going to change?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's my hope. I mean, that's really what the mission and vision of She Talks is all about, is
Right?
bringing women together to take each other, go up to the ladder together or go together, whatever it is that there's always room for you. You know, I tell people in my
Mm-hmm.
life today, like, I want my legacy to be giving back and supporting. And I can do that through my business. And that's where I'm at. I've had plenty of success in my life. I don't need another checklist of another thing. What brings me pleasure is being able to see women grow. And if I can help them with that, amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not every person is in a different spot in their life, and not every person is able to do that, right, where they're at. But that was just my mission and vision of She Talks. And, you know, we've been doing it for the last 8 years, and that's been so powerful to see this group of women come together and watch that melt away. And
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, we love our male counterparts. I always talk about my husband. He is a huge,
Mm-hmm.
important part of my life. My father is a huge, important part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So our male counterparts are so important into our
Yeah.
group and what
Yeah.
we, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's really where my passions come from.
Okay.
And you know, as I say, I'm a recovering perfectionist and I still have my days, you know.
Yes, as we all do. And let's check into perfectionism now as we've been talking about it. And actually before we do that, I would like to follow on from the comment about men in our lives. I think that's where we have been falling into a little bit of danger in the last few years, where there's been a lot of condemnation of men. Sadly, I understand why. However, it's also, I feel, this is a big one, a time of forgiveness for ourselves and for men and women to stop competing with each other, both men and women, and men also coming to connect with their deeper selves. You know,
Mhm.
there's some work there too for men to do, and it's not all up to the women to make the change. But saying that forgiveness at some point, you know, I know sometimes there's extreme situations that have taken place where it's hard to do that. But generally, if we can start stepping into more of that and understanding and being more compassionate, I think that will also help all of us move forward, men and women.
100%.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Um, but with the perfectionism piece, what do you feel is something that women can do to make a small step towards shifting away from this
Mm.
need for perfectionism?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as I mentioned, you know, sometimes it's an everyday struggle, right? You know, if you look at what you see on TV, on billboards and magazines, watch a commercial, right? So you watch a commercial and the house is totally white and it's perfect and everyone is dressed perfect and their bodies are perfect, which I always wonder, where is that White House at? And you see this kind of just form of perfection, right? We see it day in and day out, right? So subconsciously in our mind, we're like, well, I need to have that beautiful kitchen and look so awake and primped and clean, and my children are clean and there's not dirt. And then I'm going to go to work and have a perfect day
Mm-hmm.
and come home to a perfect dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we see that, even though we don't realize it, we're seeing it all day long
We
on
are.
billboards and ads, right?
Yeah.
And this is just my assumptions, right? I can't give you a scientific case study.
That's all right. I love your assumptions.
So, but my assumption is that mentally, we've seen this for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
and I will tell you, when I got my first home and I had my first child, I had these visions of a perfect house and laundry would be done and my baby would be perfect and there would be no issues. And I remember being in a store with a shirt that she had spit up all over me on, screaming her head off, like leaving my basket and just leaving because I couldn't stand in line anymore while my child was like screaming her brains out and I'm covered in puke, and going home to a dirty house, which I barely had laundry done because I'd barely slept because she was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about, like, how do they do it? Like, how do
Yeah.
it's
How?
not real, right? You
Yeah.
know,
Not
so
real.
so I think we have this kind of culturally, without knowing, brought into our minds, right? And so we're all aspiring for that. But then we all have that reality check moment, whether it's with a baby or a job or whatever, and then throw in a baby and a job and a family.
Mm-hmm.
And you start going, what, something has to give. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
time to do this. But am I not a good wife or
Right,
mom or
mom.
whatever if I don't have if my house is a mess and my laundry's not done and my kid's not perfectly dressed. I mean, we're making this joke. God bless my son. He every morning puts his shirt on backwards. And one day he made it to school with his shirt on backwards and his pants on backwards and no underwear on, and I missed it. And I remember picking him up and him saying, Mom, I went to school with and I mean, I walked out the house with him. I took him to school, but I did not
You
notice
did
it.
not know?
I didn't notice it. It was 7 in the morning. I was exhausted. And, I pick him up. He goes, Yeah, Mom, I put my pants on backwards. And I'm going like, oh my God, like I'm just winning at this mom thing right now. Right. Like, how did I miss that?
How did he manage that? That's quite a
Yeah.
feat.
Yeah. He's a boy.
Yeah,
Right.
there you
Like,
go.
and every morning I do things like, is your shirt on the right way? And he like looks.
Mhm.
But in that moment, like I just realized I'm like, listen, he's fine. Everyone's fine.
Yeah, what's the worst thing that can
What's the
happen?
worst thing happen? And that's really how I ask myself every time I have a struggle with wanting to be perfect is, what's the worst thing that's going to
Mhm.
happen, Julie?
Right. That's exactly what I share with my clients. And yeah, it's a great phrase to bring you back to center.
Mhm. Yeah, because I just think of it and I go, you know what? The worst thing that happens is laundry doesn't get done
Mhm.
and nobody cares.
Mhm.
The worst thing that happens is I have dirty dishes for the day and nobody cares.
Nobody cares. And I think this is a really good point you're bringing up. I share this with my clients too. I say, as you get older and you look back on life, you're not going to remember the dirty laundry and the dirty house. You're going to remember the experiences.
Yeah.
And that's going to stick out in your head. You won't remember anything else that you didn't dust the house for 3 weeks, or that you did and it got dusty 2 days later. And it's one of my pet peeves. But so these are the things that are so important for us to keep reminding ourselves and retraining our brains around this need for perfectionism. And of course, underneath perfection is that statement of what if I fail?
Mhm.
Is the underlying emotional layer that's going on beneath this need, which is, of course, that insecurity and lack of confidence in of itself. So one of the other tools that I also suggest is having my clients choose better thoughts. So,
Mhm.
like, okay, I am capable. When I try this as being the perfect mom, I might fail, but I will learn and succeed from this.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I will learn.
I just challenged some young girls the other day.
Yes.
I said, first I asked them, okay, do you have something on your body that you don't like? And they raised their hand. Do you have something you're afraid of? Yes. Do you ever feel you're not smart enough? Yes. And I said, okay, so every morning this week, you have to pick 3 positive things to say about yourself every morning. Then we're going to talk about it next week. And I said, every time you say something negative about yourself, then you have to say something positive. And I really picked up on this when I had a daughter and realized I can't stay in front of my daughter anymore. I feel fat. I feel ugly.
Right.
I don't feel
Yes.
smart because they are a sponge and they mimic, and it is crazy what they absorb. I let my children get to watch me do business all the time. And when they come back and tell me the things that they've noticed or heard, it's shocking, right? And that goes back to that whole absorption. My daughter recently was able to not only be the youngest she talker ever at 14,
Oh, wow.
but then she got invited to do a TEDx for youth. And one of the things
Oh,
that she said, I will quote her, is that garbage in, garbage out. And
yeah.
what and who you surround yourself with is going
Yes.
to dictate it, right? So for
Yes.
me, I cut out the garbage in, garbage out, because I realized it was affecting the people around me. How can
Right.
I preach it if I'm not living it? I
Mhm.
also made sure to take away things that were toxic in my life or brought in a negative feeling, belief, or even a person that was toxic.
Mhm.
And then the third thing I had to really do, which us women struggle at, is really love me for where I'm at. Because if you don't love you for where you're at, you're not going to be able to get past these things. You have to really know and say, I'm enough.
Mhm.
That's good enough for me. I'm enough, even if I don't have X, Y, and Z, because that's good enough for me. And that
Mhm.
is a real struggle. I mean, it is crazy how many women tell me, I can't say that
Yeah.
if I
It's
don't
it,
think I'm
yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Their self-worth over the years to be more than enough, to be good enough. The way the family structure has had them grow up and bring them up, it's so ingrained.
Mhm.
And it's very hard. I see the same thing with my clients for women to own that for a
Mm.
while until they get, sadly, maybe it's a burnout or an overwhelm that tips them over, that then allows them to say, I can't go through that again.
Yeah.
But they will push and push and push to be better than, compare with other mothers doing all the parties and the birthdays and all the
Yeah.
beautiful things that they do in the school events. And it's too much. And women are afraid to stop doing that because they'll be judged or criticized.
Oh yeah. And there
Yeah,
are those women out there that are going to judge and criticize you. And once again, I say, it's really not you.
that's right.
They have insecurities and they are deflecting that so they don't feel so bad. And it's a tough lesson to learn,
It
right?
is.
I think it starts in junior high. I got to
I
be
think
honest. My daughter
better get
just,
them young.
yeah, my daughter started her freshman year of high school, but man, let me just tell you, junior high was rough. I felt like I was reliving it with her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what is it about that age group that makes it so rough? We're so bitter and combative, and yeah, it's rough. And we're still learning our filters at that point. And I like the fact as well that you talked about, you're honest enough to say, removing yourself from people who are constantly demanding perfection from themselves. You
Mhm.
know, when you're around that type of person and that insecurity, it can rub off on yourself. And we pick up on that. We are like sponges, absorbing so much from everyone. That's training our brain the whole time. And I share this with everyone. I say, I remind everyone all the time, you know, your brain is like a piece of putty, clay. It can be shaped in however you want it to shape, with experiences and the choices of thoughts that you have, where you choose to put your attention on a
Yeah.
daily basis. And working through letting go of perfection might take a little bit of time, and it's going to pop up through the back door sometimes when you least expect it.
Mhm.
Um, but if you constantly allow yourself to put your attention on a new choice, a new habit, a new way, like you just explained, those three tips of doing things slightly differently, it could only be like maybe even 66 days they say it takes to
Mhm.
start a new behavior so it becomes more automatic. um so it doesn't take long to make these changes. It's just catching yourself, isn't it, in that moment, being present enough to observe when you are having that feeling of feeling less than, not owning your worth, why you're trying to be perfect, and
Mhm.
catching yourself and saying, why am I doing this right now, and how can I change this?
Yeah, absolutely. In my book, I talk about owning your power.
Yeah.
All have our own power that we're good at. And we want to own that. As women, we very often, and I don't want to say that guys don't have these issues.
I hear you. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
specialize in women.
Yeah.
So ladies, I know some of you guys are great at this.
Yeah.
But we very often, if someone compliments us, we
Mm-hmm.
go, we don't like it. We get embarrassed. We put that down. We don't own it, right? And so part of loving yourself and having self-worth and getting past this perfectionist issue is owning your own power. And maybe your power is basically that you are a people person and you're great with people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe owning your power is that you run this super tight ship at your house and like it's just amazing. I remember watching a friend I played ball with
Mm-hmm.
who had her last set of kids were twins. So she had 5 kids. And I was thinking, like, I'm coming over, I'm thinking her house is going to be like chaos. And it was like so just together. And I was like, girl, I am impressed. My house would be like crazy right now, with 5 kids and 2 baby twins. But I think as women, we have to be willing, and I'll give you guys permission right now to own your own power. It's not being cocky. It's allowing yourself to be good at what you're good at, and also allowing yourself to say, that's not my cup of tea, but it can totally be yours, because that is how we own our own power. For a very long time, I wanted to be good at everything. I wanted to be the best at everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to realize that it didn't make me any more worthy if I was great at 25 other things. I could be good at just this, and it was totally fine. And I could bring in 3 other people and let them all be good at
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah,
And
let them use their skills. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's a big thing to me. And for a long time, I did not own my power. I put myself down when people complimented me.
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. And so now I take those compliments and
Good.
they, Julie, that's your genius. And I go, you're right. That is my genius. So
Yeah.
let me do this. And then I'll say to other people, that is not my genius. I
Mm-hmm.
need your help on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing that a lot lately too, with a lot of projects.
I love that. And it's wonderful hearing that, because I think women, once women realize they don't have to be jack of all trades, master of none, and brilliant at everything, it takes the pressure off and hugely, and reduces anxiety, it reduces overwhelm, and it's more realistic and real. And this is where men are really good at focusing in on or what they're really good at and having others around them to help them. So we have so much to learn from men in so many ways. And this idea that, you know, that we have to be able to do everything and run the perfect home, be the perfect mother, be the perfect wife, all these things, media, upbringing, all of the experiences we've had growing up. Now is the time as mothers with younger children, you know, in this age, to now teach our daughters that this is not the case. Like, as you say with your daughter, it's sharing with them that you do not have to be everything, and find what I call your brilliance. You call it power, I call it brilliance, similar speak. Finding your brilliance, what you're here to do, and your purpose is what's really important in terms of fulfilling you and meeting your values. And we've discovered that now. How wonderful to be able to share that with children when they're younger.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. And that was a real wake up call for me when I had my
Yeah, yeah,
was I don't want her to feel like I did. And I
right.
don't want a lot of these girls to feel like this. So how do we change that? And so that's definitely been a part of what I've been doing is making sure to give back to the youth and
Wonderful.
be really honest and say, hey, listen, you're gonna feel like this. This is normal,
Hmm.
and that's okay. But
Hmm.
there's a way out from this because right now statistics are showing that our young women have the highest depression rate,
I know.
the highest suicide attempt rate in
Yes.
the nation here in the US. And that's devastating to me to read that.
Hmm.
And that was a wake up call of like, all us older women, need to start being honest because we don't want to be honest about what's happening to us because it's embarrassing,
Mm.
right? We don't always want to share those stories,
No.
but there's an impact. We've had a lot of young kids come into our She Talks, and afterwards they're going up to these women and saying, wow, so I'm not the only one that feels like this. And it's like, that's powerful. And so, as much as we don't want to, put out there our struggles, I think it's so important for not only the women in our age group, but all the youth who are facing a lot of different things that we never faced growing up. I mean, there's
Hmm.
just a different world out there.
Oh, totally different on all the tech and all the demands and everything so fast. And also this there's still comparison going on, you know, and then the drugs and the weed and everything else they throw in there. And then the schooling. There's so much school and
Yeah.
activities and pressure to be the best, pressure to get into school and college. I'm working with quite a number of teens now who are opting out, not going to university, are opting out into going to training programs, to going to work. I've been quite surprised in the last year or so where, and I'm not saying, you know, to everyone, don't go to university, but they're saying the pressure of having to get ready to go to university, higher education is just too much. And they're having reality checks of wanting to go into the workplace in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think workplace is also opening up to that fact too,
Mhm.
making a lot more opportunity than perhaps, you know, apprenticeships than there was before,
Yeah,
especially here in what I'm seeing in California anyway. So,
absolutely.
um, you know, with all of these pressures and my biggest say to these young people and the young adults is to say, stop, just stop.
Mhm.
You know, look at all these activities. Maybe you don't need to do all of these activities.
Mhm.
Maybe it's time just to take a breath and be honest with yourself about what you really want and where your focus is and where your priorities are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's, like you said, what's important to you.
Abs-
Interesting times indeed. And I wanted to, before we finish, I wanted to also speak to you about how you help veterans get back into the workplace,
Yeah.
women vets too included, and your mission there. What motivated you to do this?
Yeah. Well, have been in academia for about 23 years, in and out working at all levels.
Right.
And during about 10 years ago, I had some instructors come to me. I obviously San Diego is a huge hub for our veterans in our Navy here. We're the biggest Navy port in the nation.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, our veterans are struggling. And they explained it to me. And I was a bit naive to it. I have a grandfather and some uncles who were in the military, but they never shared with us, anything that they struggled with. Um, And so I attempted to start something at the school I was at that time, and there's no money in it. We don't want to. I was really put off by that because I thought there's so much importance in helping our students be successful, and especially our veterans. And so that's how I started Synergy Learning Institute, which is our technical vocational college. And I did what I knew, which was create educational programs that veterans could take that helped them focus a lot on the mental aspect of transition
Hmm.
from there. And then, of course, a dear friend of mine I went to college with was a 23-year Marine, and she came in saying, "Hey, I left the Marines as an officer with a PhD, and I struggled to find a job because I didn't have that transition in the mind." So she came in, Dr. Karen Walker, and helped develop a program called Combat Boots to Heels,
Hmm.
and that
That's
program
great.
is free for any a woman veteran to come in and do, and it focuses on the mental transition. And then, of course, my She Talks program, we donate funds from each She Talks to help fund that. And of course, I fund it, so do many other people. And now any veteran who contacts us, we help. If we don't have the right thing, I mean, there's over 100+ nonprofits here in San Diego.
Mm.
Many are national that we can refer them to and get them connected right away. Everything from needing help with money to pay for their apartments to food for their kids to clothing. So
Wow, that's
um,
amazing.
yeah, so we always take any veterans, but we have been specializing in supporting women veterans
Mm.
for, the last 5 or 6 years, especially on that. And, I just feel they've given so much to our country that, it's a small ask to give back to them and support them. And our women veterans have a special need, different than their male counterparts.
Yeah.
A high number of them come out single,
Hmm.
or excuse me, single mothers. People don't realize it, but the women veterans have the highest suicide in the nation and the highest homeless rate. We just don't see it because they don't ask for help.
Mm.
Um, so
That's so interesting. That's awful.
yeah,
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 I didn't know that. And that's right. They don't ask for help because they're so proud.
they've been trained.
Um, that's
Yeah.
right, not to ask. Wow. So combat boots to heels.
Mhm. Combat
Okay.
Boots to Heels, and you can find it on synergylearninginstitute.com. Of course, you can
Synergy.
go on
Hmm.
any of my platforms and message me. I'm under Julie Taylor Ducharme or Dr. Julie Ducharme. If you
Okay.
Google me, you'll find me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my website, drjulieducharme.com. That's like a hub where I have everything because
Everything.
I own multiple companies. So if you just want to get to me and not try and weave through my companies, best way to go. I'm one of those people, I will talk to everyone. It
I
doesn't
can see.
so.
I love it.
So,
drjulieducharme.com.
yes.
This will go up on the podcast anyway, the show notes. And finally, would love one nugget of wisdom from you from today's conversation. Anything you can offer us?
Yeah. I say don't take life too seriously. Have some fun because there's plenty of time for work, but there is not always enough time for fun. So that's what I say.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for being with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed having you here with us. And everyone who wants to reach out, you can reach Julie on drjulieducharme.com. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you again very soon, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Your Unique Brilliance podcast. And if you want to define your brilliance and redefine your diamond potential, schedule a personal consultation with me to discover just how you can do that at nicolasalter.com. While you're there, make sure to subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. And if you found value in the show, I would appreciate a rating on iTunes or simply tell a friend. That would be amazing. You are amazing. Have an empowered week, everyone.